5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Ahoy, everyone. My name is Bobby Shortle, and I'm here with Nick Rocco Scalia, and we are the Intrepid Filmographers. Every mini-series, we chart a course through the full filmography of a filmmaker who fascinates us. In this expedition, we do our best to try and be explorers, using our years of film knowledge to help guide us, but always being open to discovering new things about the medium we love so much. This week, we kick off a new series on the films of Jane Schoenbrun with their first film, We're All Going to the World's Fair, and find out if it's really all a game. Nick, how you doing tonight, my friend?
I'm doing good. Give me a second. I just want to prick my finger and smear a little blood on my screen, and then we can actually get started officially.
That's how we connect in this digital world, you know?
Mm-hmm. It's the only way.
Yeah, so, new series, exciting. I would say our most indie filmmaker that we've ever covered so far. I would say, right?
Well, our most indie filmmaker that is just about to make kind of the mainstream break, I feel like, and that's one of the reasons why we're doing this. It's our most timely filmmaker because
for sure, yes,
we actually have a movie coming out in a month or so, and we're going to talk about it and release that episode close as we possibly can. A lot of pressure on, but I think it's a worthwhile project, a short filmography, but one that is actually leading up to something. So yeah, it's the most in progress sort of auteur career I think we've covered.
Yeah, and I would say like, and I mean like, I think someone who's gaining notoriety in like the independent space, but I don't even think like has ever really yet. I mean, we haven't seen the new movie yet, but by all accounts, not a play at mainstream popularity, I would say.
Getting a lot of buzz though. Like, I feel like it's the kind of thing that is going to bring in an audience.
So Jane Schoenbrun, they will have 3 movies out when we finish this filmography, this quick filmography. The one we're talking about today, We're All Going to the World's Fair. We have I Saw the TV Glow, which was one of my favorite movies of 2 years ago. And then Love and Death at Camp Miasma.
Teenage sex and death at Camp Miasma.
Teenage sex and death. Sorry,
get the title right.
I'm sorry.
Very long titles.
Interesting
very
titles.
Emo, which they described, I think, this film as emo horror. I don't know if you're an emo fan, but those long Fall Out Boy. Not that
Fall Out Boy.
Emo, but they do those very long song
My Chemical Romance.
Love that stuff.
Yeah, of course.
Brand new.
Of course. Fascinating because I had not seen this movie before. You had seen it before?
No, I had read a little bit about this movie, and then it was always one of those things on my list, and I always just kind of figured it was a little too weird and esoteric, and I kind of wanted somebody else I knew to see it and let me know if I should. And then I haven't gotten to I Saw the TV Glow yet, and so this is going to be really interesting. This is the first one we've done where I haven't seen any of this person's films. Well, now I have because I've seen this one.
You've seen this one. I mean, it's a short filmography, so it's not
it is.
It's not like you have a lot to catch up on.
Manageable. Yeah, I like that.
Very manageable. And pretty short movies as well. This movie's like an hour and 20-something minutes long. Fascinating film. We'll get into it. I mean, a little bit about Schoenbrun before this. 1980, born in 1987 in Queens, New York. So definitely my neck of the woods. Watching this movie, I was like, this is definitely somewhere close to where I live. Like it had that vibe, like the whole vibe of it. And they shot it in a little bit in upstate New York, is where they shot it. But like maybe like 2.5 hours from my house, basically, is where.
That's interesting because I really couldn't place it. I'm not far. I mean, we're both tri-state area.
Yeah, but they're different worlds, my friend. You can definitely.
I was going to say because it definitely didn't look like Connecticut. Didn't really look like Long Island. So
no, there was a little bit of a Long Island vibe too. There was a couple of shots in it where I was like, "Is this Long Island?" Because of just like the general sort of like urban suburban sprawl aspect of it. So born in 1987, great quote from them in the cut. Coming into myself in the Clinton era, I didn't have information about why I was where I was or what my role was in it. It was a period when the world was still small to me, and I was being told that everything around me was normal and copacetic, while also feeling these subtle weirdnesses both within myself and the margins of this small world I occupied. I felt like I was being raised in a Burger King playpen. Such a fascinating quote because now having seen both of the movies that they have released and directed and wrote up to this point, that feels like the thematic through line of both of their movies. right there. It's just so fascinating to hear that quote so plainly shown up in the work of the artist in question that we're speaking about tonight. I mean, it's very much what this movie is about. And when you see TV Glow, it's the same thematic elements happening. And as just right, the second quote you kind of in this dossier is about how it grew up on television, right, and how it was a very big part of the Vampire Slayer, X-Files. In the rare moments when I was outside my bedroom in the basement where the other TV was, I was indoors at various fun centers and arcades. The best places for me were like the carnival, comic book shops. Halloween as a concept held such importance to me. I was drawn to spaces where magic could be real, and the front lawn energy of the suburbs could give way to something more nocturnal and creepy.
This is interesting to me because we had this conversation on mic or off mic a couple of weeks ago where I don't know why. I mean, I do remember reading a little bit about this movie and reading a little bit about Schoenbrun, and I figured this person was quite a bit younger than us. I would have thought like born late 90s or something like that, and kind of placed them in that same sort of category as, I think I'm getting the name right, the Skinnamarink guy, Kyle Edward Ball, I think his name is.
I don't know the name of the Skinnamarink guy. You can call him the Skinnamarink guy. And
okay, fine. He hasn't made another movie since then. Sorry, I think it's Kyle Edward Ball. And then
make a good movie, and then we'll remember your name.
Well, I mean, I think this one has some similarities to that. But anyway, just based on what I knew about this film and kind of what their interests were, I thought it was just, someone who had grown up at kind of a later time and, was affected by this early internet stuff at a younger age. But we're kind of talking about somebody from our generation, right? Like those television touchstones, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. They mentioned the X-Files. They mentioned one of my favorite shows of all time, The Critic, which is such a real formative thing for me as well, because I didn't know most of the movie references on that show, and I just kind of liked it because it was about movies. But they're talking about Fellini and Bergman, and they had I love that show so much. I've heard it's coming back, and as kind of a young film person, it just not only made me laugh, but also made me feel like more cine-literate, and that definitely seems to be kind of a world Schoenbrun is coming from, and the fan fiction sort of community and everything. And the story that I've seen all over the place was they were publishing Buffy spoilers that were not real, but they were going viral kind of in the days before stuff went viral, because people either just really liked them or thought that's where Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the series, is going. So kind of developed the storytelling ability from that.
We were probably reading the same sites, to be honest with you. It's so fascinating, like you said, to read this, because all of their touchstones are basically all of my touchstones. Some
of them for me, definitely the X-Files and
the X-Files, Buffy, Scream, all these things are the things that were very, very formative for me, and were also very, very formative for them. But what's fascinating, I think, and why I love. We talked about a lot of movies on the show, some personal movies, some big blockbuster movies, but it was so fascinating. And but how Sausage made it, we recorded a series already about a very different filmmaker that'll be coming out after this. And the last movie we watched might be the most opposite movie to the movie we watched for that filmmaker you're on next series. Couldn't be more opposite of the film we watched this time, right? And both very, very personal movies, I think, about what makes them tick, right?
Yeah, very, very distinctive. They're creators.
Yes, but
real statement pieces on that.
This one is you can feel so much the psychology and stamp and just signature on this movie. Because it's so stripped down and so small, I think, in a really fascinating way. And it's also one of those things where how you can have all the same touchstones growing up, live basically in the same place, but have totally different outlooks and experiences on the world based on just who you are as a person, right? I mean, Schoenbrun self-described as a trans and queer child who did not yet have the language to understand their identity, found community in DIY punk and underground shows, and in making amateur horror films with their friends as a high school student. They attended Boston University and graduated the BA in film in 2009. While a college student, they worked as a production assistant on early films by the Safdie brothers. Very much as a whole, let's make a movie in the woods. Let's just take a camera out and do something, kind of thing. Which you very much feel, I think, in this movie as well. In a really fascinating way.
Interestingly, was pretty dismissive of the film school experience, which you hear that sometimes, right? Like we both were film majors, I think, and kind of went through that, and neither one of us became filmmakers, but like I never had that, like Schoenbrun talks about, like going to Boston University, taking film there, like kind of just sucked all the joy out of that experience of just making these DIY sorts of films. And I didn't feel that necessarily, but I could sort of feel how someone could, how, just sort of the machine of film school and being a film student and having to do it a certain way and having to satisfy a certain sensibility could make it feel less comfortable and less fun and less interesting. And interesting to me, Schoenbrun doesn't go directly into filmmaking like as a director, but like writes for Filmmaker magazine, works for film festivals, worked for Kickstarter as the I believe the head of the film department at Kickstarter, kind of like right out of college. So clearly a smart and ambitious person that rather than making movies right now, kind of shepherds other people through that process before they do it themselves.
Yeah, and I mean I think you're seeing a lot more of this in this generation and forward, where the pathways to becoming a filmmaker are increasingly are changing very, very rapidly, right? And I think whether it's what Schoenbrun did or like what Curry Barker was doing or what Kane Parsons was doing or whatever, basically not going right into like, I graduated film school, I've made my connections, I'm going to ground up a bunch of financing, and I'm going to try to make my movie up. I'll shop it to festivals, and I will, hopefully it hits, and whatever. Like a lot of filmmakers that we've covered on this show, or it's much more of like it's not even it's so much different, like say a Peter Jackson, where it's like I always wanted to make movies, and I was shooting this thing when I was a kid, whatever, right into being a feature film director. There is this kind of like, no, I'm going to cut my teeth somewhere else. I'm going to learn somewhere else. And then when the time is right, I will make the thing that I want to make. Right. Made a documentary, basically like a compilation of like YouTube clips about the Slender Man legend. Obviously, really, once again, like all of these things are building blocks towards what they eventually will do, because you can see that stuff in this movie. Absolutely. Right. Like,
parts of this movie are that basically they're kind of a fictionalized version of a compilation of YouTube clips. Yeah. Did you see it? I need to see it. It's I believe it's online. I think it was posted to Vimeo. I kind of just read the whole history of this, and then they pulled it, and then they tweeted out a link to it, and then that didn't work. But I looked for it and I found it, but there's nothing. I don't know. I couldn't tell if it was the real thing or not, but it probably is on YouTube, so I think I'm just going to watch it.
I'm sure it's on YouTube. Yeah, I'm sure it's on YouTube.
No, I'm just saying I wasn't sure if it was the actual film, the Schoenbrun work, or someone else's, edit of it or something. Right.
They wrote this movie in 2019, basically inspired by their own online experiences when they were growing up in the early 2000s, and the idea of like body dysmorphia and not really recognizing yourself. Realized they were trans during the process of writing the movie, and give this quote to input. I was attacking the memory of this feeling growing up, Schoenbrun says of the film. The feeling was dysphoria, though they didn't know it until they were writing the final draft of the movie in April 2019, and they had their trans egg crack moment. Schoenbrun, who is non-binary, likens the writing process to finding this feeling on the other side of my ribcage and figuring out how I could express it in a way that resonates. Talking about trans representation in movies, talking especially about Boys Don't Cry, like growing up, basically. When you're growing up, it can be much more impactful to see a David Cronenberg movie where the body horror says more about how I see the world than the very important trans Oscar winner, which I think is interesting, right? Like, I think you and I definitely came of age of a time where, I would say making progress in those areas was not so fraught, societally, even though there was a lot of pain and problems for people who were going through those things. It really felt like they were trying to package stories about different lifestyles and types of people in a way that was somewhat sympathetic, but always tragic, right? It was always tragic. It always felt a little bit like it was, someone who didn't really understand it, sort of trying to like create something about it, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great way to describe it, right? Like Boys Don't Cry is a very, very good movie, but I'd be interested in like speaking to trans people now, seeing that film, like, what do you think of this? And, you know, does it in some sense hold up? I mean, it's a great performance. Hilary Swank is fantastic in that movie. And it did. I think it brought a lot of like awareness and prompted a lot of discussions. But yeah, it felt like a little angular toward the whole thing. Like it's, like you said, it's people doing their best to be sympathetic and to understand something that maybe they're just not fully immersed in.
Right, exactly. They don't have any stake in the game, right? So it becomes much more of a intellectual exercise or like a creative exercise than actually an interrogation of what the experience is of these people, you know.
Whereas with World's Fair, which we're going to talk about, right? Like that film is also very oblique in the way it deals with that. I mean, I do think that's what it's about. And Schoenbrun has talked about basically all of their films in some sense being about that. But really, like gender doesn't come up much in this movie. Like it's something that you kind of have to, you know, provide the context for or something. Like you can kind of bring that. I mean, it's about identity, but not necessarily gender identity. Would be but I think
in a very powerful way, I think it obfuscates that on purpose because if it makes it just about that specifically, then you're going to probably cut off a chunk of the audience like investment in it because people have their prejudices and have their sort of like hangups. But I think really what's so impactful about this movie, and I would say the same thing about I Saw the TV Glow when we talk about that next time, is that it's about these things, but makes you understand them, I feel like, in a way as a straight cis man. I didn't, you know, I can actually be like, well, that sounds like it's a tough experience to have, right? I have sympathy, you know, but like I don't understand the feeling, you know. But I believe that you're going through this feeling, and that it's an upheaval.
I think there's kind of a more universal thing going on in this film too, right? Like it's about identity, like I said, just in general, in some sense, and being someone else, and this idea of participating in things that like kind of help you realize who you are. And I think almost everyone has had some kind of experience like that, I feel like.
But I think that's the smart thing about the hook of this, which is that it makes you realize that the experience being had by, you know, someone who is going through a gender identity crisis is not really that different from a crisis maybe that you've had in your life trying to figure out who you were, right? It's like people see it in these
there's other types of dysphoria besides just gender dysphoria.
Exactly, but also just this stark idea that like there's something like alien about the experience that people who have, you know, gender dysphoria go through, where I think this movie and I Saw the TV Glow really make a really, without being didactic or pedantic, really make a point that no, this is just the experience that like an experience like anybody else's experience, you know, the experience that you have when you can just feel in your gut that something isn't right about the way you're living your life, the way that you're going through life, the way that you're letting life affect you. And I think this movie gets at that in a really fascinating way, right? And also, I think it's also in a lot of ways, you know, about this idea of how separated you can become as a person in the modern world, and how there are these things that you'll do to try to connect, that people will do to try to connect, that can be self-destructive and can lead them down into bad places when they put all sort of like their self-worth or all their sort of like, you know, personhood into this thing that's sort of outside of them, right? And I think this movie does some interesting stuff with that.
Right, and outside of other people, right? We're talking about connecting online here. Interestingly enough, right? Like this is a pre-COVID movie. I believe it was filmed just before the pandemic hit, but it's essentially, I mean, I'd say about 95% of it is two characters who are completely isolated from each other. I mean, we're spending a very good chunk of this movie just in one person's bedroom with that person. Sorry, talk about connection. It's a spam call. So it does have that kind of COVID core. I coined that term about those COVID movies. It also, a lot of this feels like, and I forget the term for this, the John Cho movie where the whole thing Screen Life. It's kind of an early version of that. It's a couple years before like the wave of those hit. Thank you. You're like Harold and Kumar. What?
No. I knew because I was thinking when I was watching it because I was like I didn't realize that this was like a Screen Life movie in a lot of ways. I didn't know that.
It isn't, right? And interestingly enough, like I think Schoenbrun does a good job of bringing in some just conventional, like it never feels forced when we break out of that and we actually see these characters in a more sort of film-like sort of way, for lack of a better term to describe it. But it's it kind of is ahead of the curve on that stuff. A little bit, again, I keep mentioning Skinamarink and stuff like Backrooms, this kind of like very internet connected analog horror type stuff. And again, I would have put Schoenbrun in that category, thinking they were a younger person. But I guess we can all be interested in this stuff because I'm pretty I am increasingly interested in the stuff that we see in this movie, just in terms of the communication aspect of it and the the way we are digital more than we're real in some sense.
Yeah, I mean this kind of stuff fascinates me. Like there's that point in the middle of the movie where it basically just like rolls through a bunch of videos like without stopping, without ever taking you out of the really from that point on until you really never see the main character Casey not filming a video basically from that point on. I think that stuff is fascinating and really does, I think, communicate so much like what life is sort of just like, and I think now, in the way we consume media and like there's even that that part where the main character, she like can't sleep, so she goes out to like the shed or whatever it is, the garage, and watches like an ASMR sleeping video on like a projector. And it really did. One thing about, Schoenbrun, we talked about this, I think off mic last time, even though they are the same age as us.
A little younger,
but in the same
generation.
Same generation, I mean, it's a couple of years, but like it's, a lot of the same cultural touchstones, definitely that same, like straddling that line between like the analog and digital, fully digital worlds. Yeah. All that kind of stuff is that like, really, it's just like such a modern feeling movie. And the fact that it really grasps what it's like to sort of live in the modern world. You know what I mean? And I love that about it. And I think that, like their other movie, this is the kind of movie where like, the first 20 or so minutes of it, I'm sort of like, okay, like I'm there, but I've sort of like a detached feeling from it, right? I'm sort of like, watching something on a screen. Like I'm just very like, I'm at the distance. Like I'm not like fully wrapped up in what's happening. But by the time we get to like, the let's call it the climax of the movie, I am so enveloped and wrapped in what is happening in the movie and like the experience of the only character, the two characters we have in the movie, and like what it all means. Because my brain starts, what I love about this too, the same thing on the TV Glow, is like my brain starts cooking like immediately. Like it's like, okay, like I know I can feel the themes going on. It's almost like reading a book, right? And that's what I think is really so fascinating about it, is like a lot of times with movies like that are thematic, I like that stuff will sort of like come to me after, or it will sort of like wash over me in little fits and starts. But in both of their movies that I've seen, they give you such interesting stuff to like hook onto, to be like, okay, like, yeah, because there are times where like, and I think purposely there are times in this movie where like nothing's happening. Like it's just like it's like a static camera angle where you're just watching her like do a normal thing, and you're waiting for something creepy to happen.
Sleep from time to time.
Yeah. And
very paranormal activity, which
is references in this
directly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it gives you. Let me finish my
really quick. It gives you I think it gives you a chance for your brain to think on the stuff that's been being given to you in the movie beforehand. That's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I was going to say also, the last, I'd say it's hard to divide this into like sequences. But
yeah.
If we did, I think the last three are phenomenal. Like this movie takes a while to get there. It is a very slow, as you said, we are looking at, static camera angles. There's not much going on. This is not one of those horror movie like Skinamarink where we're kind of like scanning the frame to see if there is something creepy there. It's not that kind of horror.
It isn't.
I would argue it almost is not horror at all. And I think
I don't really think it's horror. It's
horror adjacent for
yes.
sure, but they've made some interesting comments about genre and how this sort of fits into that and maybe doesn't fit into that. But, when we are looking at those sort of static moments, they're building to some really interesting stuff for both of these two characters. And I don't know, I wasn't sure. One of the things I had read about this was people were kind of disappointed with the ending. So you shouldn't read that stuff before you watch any movie, I don't think. But, I had seen it and I couldn't completely purge that from my brain.
Right.
But I think this ends brilliantly and beautifully and creepily. And I can't wait to talk about those last three sequences because my head is kind of spinning from them.
Yeah. So, I mean, we mentioned the kind of at the beginning, there isn't a lot of plot in the movie, but just to give people an idea of what the movie is about, so we kind of sort of like a guide to our conversation. We meet our main character Casey recording a YouTube video, basically participating in an online sort of trend creepypasta sort of thing where you say, I want to go to the World's Fair twice or three times. I don't remember if it was twice or three times.
It's three times.
Three times.
The Bloody Mary sort of thing.
The Bloody Mary sort of thing.
And then modernization of like that kind of thing.
And then you kind of prick your finger a bunch with a pin. You watch this video and then you kind of smear blood.
A line of blood on the screen. Yeah, then watch a video that's just we don't see it, which I really like. Or I think we see it later in the film.
I feel like we see it at the end, scene, right?
Yeah.
Like that, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just kind of strobing colors that beautifully illuminate her face. It's just very interesting visual there. And it is, it's interesting, right? The way I've seen it described is it's a game. They're participating in a game. It's I think the participants in this, in some sense, are acting, or just kind of, they're. Or
are they? That's what I think the movie is very much playing with, right? It's an ARG, right? It's like a living game where you do this video and then you're supposed to document
your changes right?
That
it's
you feel
like
you're
to
having.
Affect you mentally and physically in some sense.
Yes, and you document it, and then there are like role playing sort of servers you can join where you can talk to other people who are part of the game in game in character.
It's compared to an MMORPG, which I think someone mentions at some point in this film. But it's I think there's a performative aspect of it, which is really interesting.
Which
right?
they bring up in the movie, right? She straight up says it, right, in the movie in a really kind of fascinating way. But it also, I think, it interrogates the idea of where does the line between you acting and what you're really feeling really begin and end? Because from all we know about Casey, we don't see a lot of her life outside of the screens.
We know nothing. We never see her interact with another person.
We never see her except for once with her dad,
who says, it's 3 a.m. in the morning, go to bed.
Yeah.
Off screen. We never see what he looks like. Yeah.
And so, we don't know what kind of life she has. We are assuming, not great, right? Because the things that she's doing, the things that she's saying, the videos that she makes are all very lonely. She never mentions another person.
This whole movie, this is one of the loneliest, most isolated movies I think I've ever seen.
For sure.
It's so, it drives that point home over and over and over again. We never see her interact with anyone. We never see anyone else in the room with her. We see her walking. There's this great shot. There's a lot of walking shots in this movie, which usually drives me batty. It's usually a way you pad out a very low budget movie that you're trying to get to feature length running time.
Yeah, of course.
The walking scenes in this movie that are like that, I love them. Great score by Alex G here.
Oof, it's so good.
Moody indie guitar stuff, and I don't know, just really works for me, which is, it's something that never does. But yeah, you get the sense that this person is just by herself. Literally, there's nothing. She interacts only online, and we never see anything other than that.
Yeah, and this, I think it's, it very much illustrates what the suburban life can be like, which is just home, car, wherever you're going, back in your car, home. You don't really have to. We get
shots of these strip malls, these big box stores.
Yeah, Best Buy,
very vacant looking sort of big box stores. We're talking about modern era, so no one really there to see.
The only time we really see multiple people is when she's on the street for New Year's Eve. There's a local New Year's Eve celebration, but she's interacting with a single person during that whole part. She's talking to the other character. What's it? LB? what is it? JLB.
Yeah, she's making a video. She's not talking to him. She's not like
right, but she's making a video for him to hear, basically. Yeah. And so this
because,
JBL
again, going back, sorry, really quickly, this performative thing, right? The first thing we see of her, which is another fascinating choice, is she's doing this video and she kind of introduces herself like 3 times. Like, sometimes we do that on the show.
Yeah, she restarts the video.
You don't nail it the first time, so you start over and do it again, which is a very, I think, speaks a lot to who this character is and just this whole mentality of putting on a show for people, which is a lot of what this movie is about.
Yeah, and she changes her lighting, in there as well. And so she does this, and eventually she sees a video made for her by this other person who who calls themselves JLB, basically saying, "You're in trouble. Please reach out to me. We need to talk." And she sort of, it's where we introduce like this sort of like role playing server. And then she starts speaking with this, this man we see him right away. She never sees his face. We see him, he's like a middle-aged guy who lives in a big house. Very
nice. Yeah. McMansion type suburban house, clearly has a lot of money. We do see it's great the way this person is credited. A woman passes by like in the very back of the frame in one shot. She's not credited as his wife. It's just JLB's ? And then the actress name in the credits.
Because it could be his mother.
Could be his mother, could be his sister, could be his wife. We don't know that it's his house, but it seems like it is.
He sleeps in a tiny little bed. That's the only thing that's weird. He sleeps in like a small room. And like,
was that where he sleeps though, or is that just where he makes his videos?
I know, but he lays on that bed too. So
I wasn't sure if that was like his son's room or something. There's all these like high school sports trophies.
But I think intentionally they leave it vague.
It could be,
because this person could be just like a regular nice person, or this person could in fact be some sort of like sex pest or something. You don't know, right? Because I think the movie does such a fascinating job of keeping things oblique in a way that you can fill in the gaps how you sort of want to, or ask a lot of questions about what is really happening and what isn't really happening, right?
I wanted to mention really quickly, just I didn't put this in the information I sent for you. I forgot to. I meant to. This is actually based on someone that Schoenbrun interacted with as a younger person. Kind of was online, connected with some older man, it was very much like this relationship, right? And I guess this person was claiming to be a vampire and said he was doing like vampire stuff with his boyfriend, drinking blood, it's like a fetish thing or something like that. And Schoenbrun was like, I was just online to talk to my friends about, camp or whatever. And here's this guy telling me he's sucking his boyfriend's blood and all that. And interestingly about Schoenbrun, clearly understood, even they were probably like 13 or something, right? And this was an adult person and kind of knew I shouldn't talk to this person, and like kind of kept him at arm's length, and eventually just kind of cut off all communication altogether. But, kind of the thing I read, they sounded like they were talking about it like, it wasn't a scary thing. It was more, I sort of understood what I was getting into there. And it was clearly the fuel for some storytelling stuff later on, and was kind of a formative experience. But also they were smart enough to not get too close and to not, let it become, maybe this person was, like you just said about this character, perfectly innocent, just kind of role playing online. But if they were actually dangerous, Schoenbrun knew not to get too close.
Yeah, I mean, you do see them watching other people's videos other than hers, right? Who are participating like in this game, and you see you see like 2 specifically. This guy who is like his skin is like molting off, and he like pulls like admit one ticket stubs out of his arm.
That's great. I like that moment.
Yeah, it's a nice little effect too.
There's
and then
a girl who said, I think the video is titled "My skin is turning to plastic." Or I am turning into plastic, and it's like this upbeat techno song, and like a very bizarre looking video. There's also one of them, and it like this person doesn't speak, but it's a YouTuber. They're actual YouTubers. One that I was actually familiar with, May Lights, I think her name is, who did Nick Spheres was the channel, and she did horror movie reviews for a long time, like B horror movie type stuff. And I think the channel's defunct now, but it's interestingly like recognizes for, so it's kind of tying in some real stuff, bringing in people who are actually YouTubers to participate and be, like that Slender Man thing that Schoenbrun did before this, right? Where we're kind of, it's like a meta sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, there's a magic to that, I think.
Semi documentary kind of feel.
When you're in our era, I think there's like sort of like a little bit of a magic to that because it makes things feel, I think, more real in a way, that it just triggers something in our brains, like, I mean, there's that moment too, right, where she kind of looks right down the barrel of the camera and says, I can't see your face, but I know you're watching me. Mm-hmm. And we get this pullout where you're like, okay, she's talking to the guy, but like, there's the moment where she definitely it's left to be like, they're talking to you, right? Yeah. Like, in a way, they are talking to you, right? Like, but I find that sort of fascinating, and I really love that. The other thing that makes it feel more authentic is this fact that there are these videos that are just like nothing. They're just like little moments that really don't add anything other than just like, this person just is recording everything now. Like there used to be like sporadic, like, and I think the movie intentionally is sort of structured this way, which at the beginning, you've got like a pretty even split, if not more time in like, let's quote unquote, the real world, like, and then the online like video world. But as the movie goes on, like you get less and less to zero.
We don't see any walking shots in the second half of the film. Yeah, there's a lot of that.
Right, but not even like no, hey, like, the camera is third person now. Like this is not a thing that that Casey is filming. This is the thing that the movie is cinematically giving us, information that really goes away for her. I think probably like halfway through the movie about.
Yeah, I think that
and then
sense.
we're pretty much only thing real world we're seeing is the guy, right? The only thing we're seeing is the stuff from JLB. So I think that's very fascinating, right? How she kind of like really is losing herself more and more and more as it goes through. And, her whole idea is that she's like, nothing crazy physically is happening to me, but I do feel like I'm becoming a different person. Right. And there's this early scene where it's one of those things where it's like a mix between the screen life and the real life, where she's outside sitting like in like, it's winter. It's like, there's some snow on the ground. And she's filming herself just like on a laptop. And we have this really long wide shot that's just up there for a long time of her talking to the camera. And she says this thing where like, when she was younger, she had this thing where she would fall asleep, but be aware of what was going on and wouldn't be in control of what she was doing. Sleepwalking, basically. But that didn't really happen anymore, but it's beginning to happen again. And that's the thing she kind of diagnosis as like, I'm changing, right? Something is changing about me.
And we never know, which is really interesting, right? Like what is real, what is just kind of a fictional, like to make the game, they are kind of participating in this like group collective storytelling thing almost, like this World's Fair challenge thing. By the way, I mean, I don't know. The film is very cagey about this also, but the idea like the World's Fair is like what you evolve into or something. Like it's not so much a place as a, almost like a state of mind kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I think the creepy pasta legend of it to me is, no, it is a place like, I mean, it's basically you're dead, right? I think that's the point. It's a point where you keep changing until like you die and go to this place, right? And it's like a place where your soul kind of gets like trapped by this. They mention the name of like this demon or whatever that's going to trap your soul or whatever. And it's, and I don't know why they call it the World's Fair. They do have a quick insert of the actual like Queen's World Fair in there, but it's just idea. I think really it's just idea of like, there's this sort of like almost, it's not like a limit. It's kind of like a liminal space, right? It's a space that you go to and you're kind of lost there, right? And I think, which is why I think it's so, the line is so blurred, right? Because it does feel like a thing that people who were really desperate and lonely would sort of cling to, right? This idea that like, I don't have a place in the world, but I'll have a place if I go through this thing, even though it's going to take the me hurting myself. I will have a place. I will belong, right? I will be part of something. And that really feels like what this girl wants, right? She wants to be part of something. She wants to feel like she's included in something. That's why she makes videos, right? She wants people to watch them. Nobody really watches them. And she even has like a line about it, like kind of early on, like, who wants to watch these stupid videos or whatever it is.
We see the view counts.
Yeah. And sometimes they go up a little higher. Sometimes they're like nobody's watching it.
Yeah, they're low triple digits.
Yeah. At the best. Sometimes it's like 10 to
sometimes it's double digits. Sure.
45, whatever it might be. But she keeps making them, right? And also like this guy is encouraging her to make the videos, right? Keep making. I'll know you're safe if you keep making videos.
Yeah, he connects with her, makes this very creepy video, which is okay in some sense because that's what everybody's doing here, right? There's this
it's part of the game,
group storytelling thing. She says there's a great line that Casey has early on in one of her videos. She says, "I always liked horror movies, and I thought it might be fun to be in one, like to be part of the experience." Or I forget exactly how she says it. I should have wrote it down, but that really kind of contextualizes at least her, the way she kind of approaches this whole thing, which is interesting to me because it like this movie, if you want to read it on a very base sort of level, it kind of feels like a possession narrative. Like she goes through the World's Fair challenge. It does change her. Something is kind of taken over her, kind of like filled her mind or something, or filled her subconscious with these thoughts. Maybe dark thoughts. There's a moment where she pulls out her dad's gun. There's a rifle in a case, and she looks at it, and then she goes and watches YouTube. She does a lot of that. But if you wanted to just read this as sort of a conventional horror movie, which I don't think is a good way to read it, that is what it is, right? And she gets increasingly erratic, and it seems like she's more sort of controlled by whatever this entity is. So that's kind of her story. His story is like he connects with her, kind of acts like he's being protective of her. And we don't know how sincere he is about it. We also, just the way it is, right? Like, because we see him so quickly and we learn what he is, what kind of person he is, like an older person who clearly has a life outside of all this, but seems very fixated on this.
But does he have a life outside of this? Because we don't see him. He didn't interact with anybody either. Like he's only over on the screens.
How is he living in that house, though?
Well, that's the question, right? But he's always looking at these screens. He's always talking to people. There is this thing where like, maybe he's nice, but he did, and he maybe just playing this game, but he did pick a high school girl to talk to, so it's like, there is all of that is wrapped up in this. And it's also
his Skype avatar, which is like a drawing that he did, is the creepiest fucking thing I've ever seen.
And he's got like all these drawings, like one of those drawings is there. That drawing is there, like kind of taped to his monitor, but there's like a bunch of different ones. So it's like, a bunch of different avatars that he uses, like, and they're all these pictures that he's drawn, and he's got like all of these like different, he's got all of these like post-it, like, like not physical post-it notes, but like computer post-it notes on his desktop with all this little information in it, and like all these questions. And he also makes videos mostly for like the person that he's interacting with. Most of them are for Casey that we see him doing.
Yeah, but he's got like just start making stuff back and forth. That's
but he's not. The thing is, like, when we see Casey doing it, again, we're never seeing her screen, right? We never see her screen. We never really see what she's doing, except the time when she's in the woods, right? And she's recording. We do see her screen then, and it's just her video, right? We can just see her video and she's recording. He's got a script that he's written. He's reading a script. And he won't show his face, and he's reading a script, and it seems like very well rehearsed. And so there is like that weird creepiness to that aspect of it too. And for her, go back to what you were saying, you're right. There's could be like, oh yeah, she's slowly getting possessed. And yeah, they think it's a game, but it's actually not a game. It's classic horror movie storyline, right? This thing you thought was fake is actually real. It's like, the most popular horror movie of the year is basically about that thing, right? Like Obsession is basically about this, right? But like you said, I think that's, I won't say anybody's reading that movie is wrong, but I think it would be, you're doing yourself a disservice to read it that way, because I think it also is like, but is it really just her using this, like, conceit, this structure to sort of like let this erratic, manic behavior that she's got going on, she's having some sort of breakdown, and she's using it as an excuse to like do these destructive things.
She's kind of letting herself go into the game almost. Like if there is something possessing her, it's kind of herself, maybe. Because there are some moments, there's a dance sequence in this that is, I had the volume up way too loud. It's toward the end of the film, and she does this like very silly World's Fair sort of dance performance, and then just has this like very realistic screaming fit in the middle of it, and it freaks me out pretty good.
Yeah, that felt like Obsession, by the way. That felt like it was like I'm like Curry Barker saw this movie. Like that's how I felt when I was watching that moment, because there are definitely moments in a couple moments in Obsession where the character behaves almost identical to that.
Yeah,
you know?
That's a good comparison. Anna Cobb, I just wanted to mention, this is like the only feature film she's ever been in. Schoenbrun just kind of found her in New York and cast her in this thing where, you know, she's basically just acting by herself the entire time. Like, both performances in this are fantastic.
Really good. Yeah. Really, really
amazing
good.
That we can say both. There's literally, I mean, there's two main characters. Michael J. Rogers is JLB.
Yeah.
And they're both, I mean, I don't think this would work if they weren't very, very committed, and they both are. They both kind of get under your skin here, I feel like.
They do, for sure. And I want to say, too, one of the things I love about this movie, and I think it speaks to what we mentioned about Schoenbrun talking about just like grab a camera and go shoot out in the woods. It has that vibe, right? It's like, this movie costs $175,000 to make, which is, you know, nothing in movie terms, obviously. But it feels like a movie that if you own a camera and a computer, you could make this movie, right?
It's real DIY. It's real like micro budget stuff. I mean, I think that money, if anything, went to the score and like the
actors,
like
and
technical stuff and paying the actors and the crew. I mean, there was a crew, not Schoenbrun just doing it all themselves.
No.
But it is, I mean, it's a very sort of intimate movie. Mention just about Alex G, like bedroom pop, that sort of idea. You know, they called it like laptop pop. All of this stuff in this movie, I know it comes out in 2021 and gets kind of a wider release in 22, but it almost feels like something from about 10 years before that. Like these kinds of things, creepypastas and bedroom pop and that kind of stuff. It's almost like a thing that was probably almost gone by then. You know, once this movie gets made and once this movie gets released, all that's kind of become like closer to what we have now. And I don't know that we necessarily have stuff like this now. Whereas this was more like early 2000s-ish internet stuff.
Yeah, but I do think, actually, you're right, but I do think, you know, it's come back in sort of a big way. I mean, the Backrooms is basically, that's what the Backrooms basically is, right? It's basically began its life as like a creepypasta type of thing, you know? And I mean, right before this, right, you're getting, what was that movie called? The one, Lights Out, right? Was that the movie? That was a creepypasta they made into a feature film, right? And that that was kind of in the super around this time. The Slender Man movie also comes out around this time. You know, that stuff had, I think, broken out of like online niche and had forced its way into the mainstream a little bit around this time. It kind of came and went, I think, pretty fast. But I think it's only, slightly increased actually in the last few years because of the kind of gaggle of filmmakers now who like, you know, who
grew up on that stuff.
Yeah, who grew up on it. Yeah, who grew up on it. And I think there is like this power to, you know, these simple, short ideas, these mimetic ideas that can really grab hold of you in that kind of way, right? Because like the Backroom starts as an image that's released, you know, that's it. And basically it's like uncredited image, like and Kane Parsons sees that as a kid and is like, it just lit up their imagination, right? And so like that I think is, the movie's still playing in that sort of world, right? I think this, if anything, it's gotten darker out there, like if on the internet for, you know, and it's become much, this feels almost quaint in the way that it is such a fabricated thing that people are sort of like urban legending, you know, into existence. Whereas now it feels like it's just some terrible conspiracy theory that people like act out in real life against people that they imagine are doing something wrong. You know what I mean? Like that. So in that way, I think you're right that it kind of feels a little bit old in that way. But
well, this reminded me of, God, I forget the name of it. I think it's called Morgellons syndrome, which is like this disease. Do you remember that?
No.
And maybe that was a creepypasta too, that kind of took on like a realistic thing. But it's like you read about this medical condition, this disease. I think it's called Morgellons syndrome. And then like, that's how you get it. Like it's like a disease that's spread through, you know, reading about it on the internet.
Of course. Okay. So that kind of thing. Yeah.
It was like early 2000s. And I remember that being a very, very creepy idea. And like this movie is playing some of those waters too, I think.
For sure. Yes, absolutely. I think that as we build through the movie and, you know, we see her become more and more unhinged, I guess my question to you is that, you know, you say you're really excited to talk about the last couple of sequences. I want to talk about I want to get into those sequences, but I really do want to ask you the ending, right? Where JLB reads this script where he talks about meeting Casey in real life. Do you think that's all bullshit, or do you think that's true?
Oh, I think it's 100% bullshit.
Yeah, me too.
It is.
Yeah.
It's the saddest, creepiest.
Yeah.
I like. Again, I just saw this movie. I mean, I watched it yesterday. Like, it's pretty fresh in my mind, and I've been thinking about it, nonstop ever since. That scene it's really something else, man.
Yeah.
I still don't know how I feel about this character. Not good.
No.
But, like, what degree of bad and how sympathetic should I be? I mean, it feels like this delusional person kind of spilling his guts in a way that just feels very real in some sense. Like, it's this fictionalized story. Like, I gotta imagine it's not true, right? Like, and that's one of the things that I think make those three sequences so interesting, is because Casey basically says to him, like, this is just a game. Like, did you think this was real? Like, you're going to call the police and send them to my house? Like, you think I'm actually in danger? It's a game. Don't you understand that? And then we see him, talking about, like, a year later or something, like, well, we met up and we talked about it and we had this great conversation. And it's like, that's exactly what that person would probably, he's like, he's shunned by her essentially. And she completely cuts him off. And there's this moment where he tries to call her on Skype and she's not picking up. And it's just so unsettling. Like, I wouldn't necessarily call this a horror movie, but like the last 10 minutes of it where nothing like outwardly spooky happens, like we don't get any screaming fits. We don't get anyone dismembering a stuffed animal. It's another great scene here from earlier. But like, these moments are profoundly disturbing, I felt like.
Yeah, they are very disturbing. But I think, once again, what I love about what Schoenbrun does is that, yeah, he does these creepy things, but like I said, he is the only person for the last 45 minutes of this movie that we see from the filmmaker's eye, right? That we don't see from the perspective of the character in the movie showing us what they want us to see, right? We see this person, basically they have this conversation, basically, this really intense Skype conversation is happening between him and Casey. And, she's like, so like, how long do you think I have before I do it? Right. Before I take my own life, essentially. And he basically says, okay, whoa. Can we just like speak like out of game?
Outside of game. Yeah.
Outside of game for a second. And he's like, and she's like, wait, what do you mean? And he's like, it's like it's like an MMO term. Like, we're going to talk like not in the RP-ness. Like, we're going to talk about like,
like out of character,
basically. Right. Like, it's like the moment in D&D where like, let's pause for a second. Like, and he says like, it's a game, right? Where that like, we're all just like, this is acting, right? Like, he's kind of trying to make sure for himself, I think, because he's really come to believe, I think honestly, in that moment, he's almost like he's like the viewer surrogate in some ways, because I don't know how you felt, but I also got kind of like lost in the idea that she was acting. It was so believable that I was like, no, this girl is headed towards like a really bad end. That's how I felt like watching the video.
And it comes really as a shock, I think, when she says like, don't you understand this is just a game? Don't call the police on me. How dare you do that? Like, he
says it was just a game. He says, you understand it's right, the game, right? Like, you're not really going to hurt yourself, right? All this stuff. And she's like, yeah, what do you talk? Of course.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Like, that moment kind of came a little bit surprising to me. Like, she breaks character kind of right away.
But did you, again, I think it's up for interpretation. That read of her, though, I don't buy it from her 100% either. Like, there's something about the sharpness with which she reacts.
Yeah.
Is not the sharpness of someone who is like, oh yeah, absolutely, everything's fine. Like, you're being stupid, man. Like, everything's cool. It's the reaction of, you saw through my like thing, and now I'm going to be like ultra angry. Like, I'm going to respond with anger and just push you away because you're close. I don't want to send
the police over here because I want to actually do the thing that I'm threatening to do. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but then after they have that, she says like, don't ever call me again, calls him a pedophile. Right. And he kind of like walks away. He turns it off. He walks away. Like that reaction also is one thing where like, okay, maybe he actually did have some sort of thing, because the way he reacts to it is like, you're bringing up something. Busted. But he goes to his TV to suddenly turn on YouTube and watch more videos. And, but then he goes like, no. And he goes back to the computer, and it's like, there is some sort of whatever twisted version of it is caring about what happens to this girl, right? He doesn't want her to hurt herself, and he does actually believe she can hurt herself. Now, again, he does not.
And he just says, keep making videos. Like, you don't have to talk to me anymore, but keep making videos, so I can watch over you, make sure you're okay. But really, it's also because he's addicted to her content in some sense.
And he doesn't call the police. He doesn't report the videos, so there is a point where like he only has so much, but it also points to that sort of weirdness when you know somebody in a kind of abstracted way where it's like, am I overreacting if I, do I think I know them better than I actually know them? Like, am I reading this all wrong? And so it's like, do I call the police or report this and then something happens to her? And then like, what if it was nothing, So I get that also playing in that sort of like zone of ambiguity, I guess. But do you think that because after he kind of goes back to the computer screen and puts his hand on the screen and like, and then it goes black, and then I was like, oh my God, are we never going to see her again? Like, that's how I felt. And then we get one final actual like video of her where it's basically the video playing again, the screen's flashing, and she's saying like, one day, I'm just going to be gone, essentially. And you're not going to know where I went. And
which is, I believe I think it's just a repeated scene from earlier in the movie, isn't it?
It is, but the way it's displayed is more intense. Like the flickering of the lights.
She said that exact thing before. And then we see the strobe, the World's Fair Challenge thing.
Yeah. The World's Fair Challenge thing play out. And then like, we go black and then we come back and we're getting this, like I mentioned, this written speech from
this
the
monologue
guy.
by him. This was a very, very different movie, but I got like No Country for Old Men vibes from this. Like that final bit with Tommy Lee Jones there, which is one of my favorite scenes in all of film.
Yeah.
This, for some reason, kind of felt like that to me. Like this, and then the movie just kind of cuts to black and it's over.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it absolutely does. So I guess my question to you is like, do you think she hurts herself?
I don't know. That's a good question because, again, kind of knowing what we know about Schoenbrun and like what they've written and what they've talked about, this egg crack thing and all of that, like, is Casey really moving towards something bad? Like, do we know that? Or is Casey just moving toward discovering her identity in some sense, right? Like becoming something else that's not necessarily, detrimental, hurtful to herself, but is just different?
It's possible, but she does say some very red flag stuff.
She does, but
so, and I think that is.
But is that just kind of like growing pains? The process of finding herself, kind of thing. Like,
it's possible.
Like,
absolutely.
Should we be very worried about her, or should we understand that she's just, a very complex person who is dealing with some stuff inside that she kind of has to figure out, and maybe that's the end game there.
Yeah, but how is she dealing with it? That's the question. It's one of these things where it's like, she's dealing with by making this increasingly bizarre content, right? There is, it's so funny, like the poster for this movie is basically like one of the last things you see in the movie, essentially.
Yeah, it's her with the
glow in the dark, like stuff on her face. And basically that's very much her like fully committed, I'm two different people, sort of thing, right? This idea that like she rips up her sloth,
like thing. That is such a disturbing thing. Yeah. Like there's no death. This is a horror movie in some sense. No one dies in this movie that we see, but when she dismembers that stuffed animal that we've seen, she like kind of wears it around her neck for parts of the movie earlier on. It has a name, Poe, I think. It's
Poe.
like her friend, her stuffy. And then she just like destroys it and then comes back into the room. It's like, oh no, what did I do? That scene's great. That's
really great.
Pretty fucked up stuff.
Yeah. And there's that really, I think the scariest moment in the whole movie is when he's watching that video of her and narrating it when she's sleeping. It says, look what happens at 5 a.m. And she's the thing where she looked like her whole face like warps to like that weird smile.
Yeah, just rictus. Yeah.
Yeah, and it just freezes on it for like a while. That was a really creepy image. I liked that a lot. And I think it is really this idea of like also this like creator consumer parasocial relationship as well, which I think is also something that is obviously gets just more and more prevalent in modern times as we talk about all these personalities, like whether they be streamers or YouTubers or whatever, that, you know, do all this very personal content, whether, and I'm not even talking about like they do like life stuff. I mean, like, you know, they sit in front of you in a camera and they watch a movie and they talk and they react like you're sitting next to them, like you're a friend, you know, or whatever. And, you know, I think that causes these sort of, you know, weird feelings of connection that are just so one-sided. You know, it's like TV on steroids, basically, with that sort of like feeling of this person being in your home, being in your living room. And I think this movie also is sort of addressing that in some ways. It's also so freaking weird. He watched like a 9-hour video of her sleeping. Yeah,
at 4 minutes or 4 hours and 30 minutes into this, you did this thing.
Yeah. Creepy as hell. So, so I mean, what are some of the scenes you wanted to talk about, those sequences you wanted to talk about?
Those the ones we just discussed toward the end of the film there, where she kind of turns on JLB and that last monologue of his, that last scripted thing that he does. And I mean, like there's no way that's real, right? That's no way he's describing a real meeting with her.
I can't imagine. It's also like there's like giveaways in it too. I think that definitely make you, first of all, it feels like every video essayist like monologue you could ever imagine from a YouTube video, you know, like there could be like, you know, some, you know, stock footage over that thing and it could be on YouTube right now and it'll get like 1 million views or whatever, you know, but it's like when he mentions the thing when he does the impression of her, you know, where he, like that part is the part that really unsells it to me. Yeah. And he says like, oh, I kept my hand on the screen the whole night. And that's why you were able to come back from the World's Fair. You know, like I saved you, like that, you know, that sort of like fantasy aspect of like, oh, then we were going to separate but then we decided to get pizza and then we decided we're going to go to the movies another time. And it was just wonderful. And he has this look on his face, like he's looking off. Yeah. But you know, like it's an actual,
high school kind of, you know, this like adolescent puppy dog sort of romance thing.
Yeah, exactly. That is just really weird, you know, and I
coming
think
from a you know, middle-aged man.
He's got to be like 40 something, right? So, and I mean, and Schoenbrun definitely was like, give me a person that looks like a pedophile. Like they definitely, it's absolutely 100%.
Less so than who's the guy in Gone Baby Gone?
But he's the guy in Gone Baby Gone adjacent looking.
It's like a better looking version of that guy.
Yeah, he's like a normal looking version of that guy, but you know, he's styled the same way.
Yep.
You know, he's got this like he's like, you know, he's like skinny and like bald, like, you know, like big shaved head, bald, you know, with like scruff on his face, you know, and so like that is like movie shorthand for unfortunately for me, that is like movie shorthand for, you know, you're a creepy dude. So I think that's definitely intentional as well. I don't think you pick that actor and that styling if that's not the case. What I want to say though too is like I think that I mentioned earlier, like, oh, you know, this is if you had a camera and a computer, you can make this movie. You could do the mechanics of this movie. Schoenbrun is such an interesting filmmaker as far as composition and shot selection and what they decide to do when they decide to move the camera, when they decide how, even to the point where like what the YouTube videos are going to look like, right? How they're going to be shot. Are they going to be first person? Is the camera going to be facing her? You know, is it going to be super shaky? Is it going to be more locked down? You know, definitely plays with this idea, like you said, like the like John Carpenter, like it's just a shot of her in the middle of a frame, and it's a pretty wide frame. And so even though nothing has happened in the movie up to this point where it would make you think you should do this, my eyes were always looking around that frame. It was always like, is there going to be a shadow? Is there going to be a person? And even like at the end, when he goes back to his computer after like she doesn't let him say, I was like, is something going to happen to him? Like now that he like showed his face or whatever it was.
There's something very ominous. Yeah. The locations and stuff. I mentioned those walking shots. There's this one in the beginning and it's just Casey, like she's walking along this chain link fence, which I think is right next to her house, but it looks like it just extends out to infinity. And it's obviously a real fence, right? Like this is not a special effect. This is just a location that Schoenbrun found somewhere. And I don't know, there's something very, again, it's that liminal spaces idea. It's this like almost dreamlike sort of like boundary sort of area that she's just walking and walking and walking, and the shot goes on for a really long time, and it's like, what is behind that fence, right? Like, what's on the other side over there? And I don't know, like, there's that. There's also just a bit where she leaves her house and walks out to the man cave, the garage that I guess is her dad's.
Yeah.
I assume she's in a single parent household, just lives with the dad. We never see any siblings. We never see her mom.
Yeah, I mean, we never see anybody
either.
Yeah,
we hear him for sure.
Yeah,
and we see,
you know,
that looks like his space there. But we follow her. It's a pretty long walk, to this outbuilding on her property. And it's just suffused with not even menace necessarily, but just like this dreamlike sort of atmosphere, and that coupled with this score that I think is just beautiful.
Yeah.
That is a little off, but also is kind of sentimental and, Schoenbrun described this as emo horror, and that's emo horror right there, I think.
Yeah, I would say so. I think there's also just this thing that I've always myself been sort of fascinated by, and when I saw the Best Buy Toys R Us thing at the very beginning, is this idea of of course, when you make a film, you want to present things in the most cinematic way possible. Most of the time, you want things to look different from reality. You want things to be heightened, beautiful. I mean, traditionally. I mean, now modern movie making, not as much, but the idea is but I've always been fascinated by the idea, but this is the places that we live. We live, this is what the world looks like now, is all these strip malls and abandoned storefronts and construction areas and fences in weird places. And it's with the back rooms is obviously kind of investigating as well in a lot of ways. Though that's more about interior spaces more than exterior spaces in a lot of ways. This idea of this sort of
the impersonality of it, the lack of people where there's supposed to be people. We talked off mic about back rooms, and it was something I read about that, right? It's this generation that grew up where those spaces still exist. You can still find a big box furniture store or something, but there's kind of nobody in there.
Yeah.
And at one point that was kind of a gathering place and there was a lot of humanity there. And now there's just this kind of weird emptiness about it. And those establishing shots at the beginning of this, I mean, they're absolutely that, right? We're not comforted by the thought that, oh, there's a Best Buy and a Dunkin' Donuts or whatever, because there's just this weird sort of unreality or unhumanity about it.
Yeah, because it's just this evidence, right, of this
this disconnection
that has come into everywhere, where everything has to have the same 7 stores that put all the other stores out of business, and then they themselves go out of business.
And you walk into a place like that and you might as well just be in a room like Casey is for most of this movie. You're not interacting with people.
And you also might as well be anywhere, right? If you walk into a Best Buy, you might as well be in any Best Buy anywhere ever, right? There's no personality, there's no localness to it, there's no community to it, right? And I think that is also what this movie is very much about. It's very much about community, right? It's very much about
the lack thereof, trying to forge that in a digital space
in a really destructive way in some ways, right? This way that you can't just talk to somebody, Casey. Just talk to somebody. You don't have to smear blood on your right, but
there's never anybody else literally except for that one scene you mentioned, the New Year's Eve bit, which is even that's a little weird. It's in the center of town. They have a ball to drop. It's
that had to be real. That had to just be a play.
I think they just filmed her in that location.
Yeah,
but even that, there's not that many people there.
No. Well, because it's a little, dude, I looked up where that town was. I've driven through that town on the way to see my wife's parents. Because I was looking at it, I was I recognize this exact layout of these signs and
where is it?
It's on the way up to Lake George. It's near Albany, area, maybe a little more south of that. And it probably not a lot of people probably live there, but they probably have a little, that is community, right? They're having a community moment out there. Yeah. And she's not a part of it at all, right? She's literally filming it. She's removed from it. She's not speaking with anybody.
Talking to her camera or phone.
She's talking about how she's going to kill her father or herself. My dad's got to go. It's there's really dark stuff happening. And there's a part where she goes to the cemetery and is it's called
I love that bit.
High school tour or whatever.
It's very student film. Here are the lockers. It's just a bunch of graves and
yeah.
Very creepy.
Yeah. And you know,
like if you knew someone making these videos, whether they're participating in the World's Fair challenge or not, you'd probably take a similar approach to JLB. You know, if it was someone close to you,
yes,
like, you know, get that person some help.
But there's obviously nobody close to her. So that's, you know, that's another thing too, is like, yeah, this guy is creepy and I'm sure not really totally up to good, you know, but he's also the only one that seems to have any stock in what's happening to her. Like her father is not part of her life, you know, like other than to yell at her, you know, even when she's stomping on her stuffed animal upstairs, like, where is he? You know, it's obviously the night. Like, we don't know anything about his life, obviously, or whatever is going on.
She's having a screaming fit in the middle of a dance performance that she's filming. Yeah, there's just nobody there. There's never anyone. That's what I'm saying, right? Like, you know, according to the movie, I love this, right? It's a very movie thing. Like, all you have is what's right in front of you, right? And, you know, because of that, she might as well be completely alone in the world. Like there is no interaction. There's nobody to talk to. And there's no, like, I kind of knew it right from the beginning too. Like that's one of the things I like about this movie. It's very, very clear, you know, as ambiguous as it is. We see that opening scene. It's about 5 to 7 minutes. It's just kind of a long take. It's her making that first video where she sits in front of the screen. She says, I want to go to the World's Fair. She does the thing. I knew right away we're never seeing anybody else with her, right? Like you could just sort of tell she's not going to have like a wacky friend or, you know, in the Blumhouse version of this, right? She has, you know, she's an outsider, she's an outcast, but she has like this one person, you know, this person that like comes over and
in like any movie version of this, right? That is made by a different filmmaker. That's probably what happens, right? There's somebody who's like, Casey, what's going on? You got to talk to me, Casey. You know, like,
or an older sibling that's dismissive of her, but like acknowledges her existence, and like literally nobody does that's not, you know, through the computer screen here. It is, and like I said, it's like I don't find this movie scary necessarily, but like there's a sadness about it that is
sad. It's very
beyond
sad.
You know, it's a weird sort of liminal kind of sadness too, right? Like, you know, it's not tear-jerking tragedy, but it's, I don't know, there's something just very unsettling about all of that. It makes me feel sad in a way that like other movies, I can't think of another movie that makes me feel sad in the same way that this one does.
Wait till you see the next one. Because it'll make you feel a similar feeling, I think. But I think...
But that does... I mean, I'll see it for myself, but like, aren't there two main characters in that like are friends and talk to each other?
There are, but just trust me. But you'll see. But what? It's not as lonely as this movie in that way.
How could anything be?
Yeah. There are other characters that the characters interact with in that movie. But there's the sadness comes from the fact that like there's just this person who is obviously lost and grasping for something and isn't really scared that they're changing, wants to change, and is scared that they are not changing, right? That this thing that they did that's supposed to change them is not changing them. So they're forcing like these things. They're like, they just want to be different. They don't want to be themselves, right? And that's part of the dysmorphia conversation, right? Is like the way they perceive themselves and the way they want to be is not the same thing. They don't line up, right? What I did think was interesting too, and I can only... And knowing who the filmmaker is, this is, you know, part of like probably why it's in my brain. But that one of the last thing that Casey says to you know, JLB is, that's not even my name. And it's like, you know, that the allegory there to like the, you know, the dead naming the trans experience is also, you know, pretty, you know, strong there as well. And also it's like, is it her name? Because we don't know. Right.
We never know. And that's what I thought was interesting.
No one's ever said her name except for this guy. And it's, you know, on her profile is like Casey World's Fair. Yeah. But that doesn't mean her name is Casey, you know? It might be just a persona that she's putting on, right? So I think that that's also like a fascinating, you know, thing about it. There's also this thing, right? At the end, I'm just thinking of this now, right? Where he talks about their meeting and he seems to kind of know where she's from, right? Because he says like, he's talking about how like, you know.
Oh, right. How they got to Manhattan.
Yeah, exactly. She's going to start acting school in Manhattan. You know, I came from Long Island. She was, you know, getting back on the subway.
Yeah. He says something about the LIRR, I think.
Yeah, he's getting on the LIRR. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think like, and there is like,
or does he? Like, could that just be because that's his world? He knows, the roots into New York because he's from there.
Yes, but I'm just saying, like, the way he talks about, how the fact that he even knows she's close to the city and close enough to come to the city to like come in for an evening. And
but that's
watch.
what I mean. Is he just projecting that too?
Well, no, because she is. That's the thing. Like in that scene that we're talking about, the New Year's scene, there are clearly like highway signs that you can see in that scene. Like it says 9W, like, it's like clearly like an intersection of highways. So he could absolutely watch that video and go, I know exactly where she lives.
That's a good point. I didn't think of that at all.
So that's another fascinating thing about,
because I was so kind of taken with the artifice, right? That's a meet cute, right? Like we both got into Manhattan, we met each other and had coffee or whatever, and like, it just feels very contrived, very artificial.
It's very contrived and artificial for sure.
Well, it is, but that's.
So it's like, how much did he actually know about her? Because I couldn't read all the little notes and stuff like that on his screen, but I'm like, is there like him trying to pinpoint her location on there, or something creepy like that on there as well? I'm sure if you go back and just freeze frame it, you can see everything. But that's what I love about Schoenbrun in general, and we'll see it also in I Saw the TV Glow. It's just this idea of like, you're not left going, I can't give a read on this movie. It could be anything, but you are able to give several reads on the material, and they all could be true or not true, or valid or not valid.
And it kind of matters and doesn't. It's a very ambiguous movie, which I understand could be very frustrating to people, but also I think the tone and the atmosphere is so strong, and it's so strongly communicated that like you're gonna feel something from this, right? Like, I didn't particularly like Skinamarink either. And it's one of those movies that the people who love it, they'll tell you like that there's something going on there. Well, you just didn't see it, right? And this is another movie that's kind of like that, in the sense that, maybe if I watched it again 100 times and I did sort of freeze frame on his screen, like you could kind of extrapolate a little bit more story out, like you just did. But also I feel like you don't necessarily have to, and you still get something very strong and powerful out of this movie. This is a really, really fascinating movie. I mean, I've said that a couple times, but I kind of went into it just knowing that it was weird and knowing that it was probably going to be something that I didn't fully understand. But I don't know. I feel like I got something very strong out of it.
Yeah. I think there's profound stuff in it. And I think the difference between it and something like Skinamarink is that Skinamarink is we want you to be hunting in the corners of the frame for things movie, right?
Yeah. There's creepy stuff in there that is very much meant to creep you out.
Yeah,
whereas
and it's
in
just
this,
more of
there's creepy stuff that just kind of creeps you out because you don't fully understand what it is.
Yeah, and I also think like this movie is,
and whether it's supposed to be
is
creepy.
Using this genre and format as a delivery system for, I think, some pretty heady concepts and ideas. Where I think that Skinamarink is the type of movie where it's just like it's creepy. That's the point, right? The point is,
like you don't have existential discussions about Skinamarink, but you absolutely kind of have to. Like this is also, it's a weirdly sort of social movie, right? Like it's a movie that you see and you have to talk to someone about, like we're doing right now. You make a video about it and people respond to that. Like it's kind of, almost creating that sort of space and that environment and that community just by existing. I mean,
I saw the TV Glow alone, and I walked into my bedroom. My wife was laying in bed watching TV, and I said, I need you to watch I Saw the TV Glow immediately, please, because I need someone to talk to about it. Because there's so much to talk about, and I can't stop thinking about this movie, right? And like I don't think like this isn't going to be. I can't stop thinking about this movie for because I do think like when we watch TV Glow, a lot of what they're doing is sort of crystallized more in that movie. But this movie it's such a perfect first movie.
Yeah,
and I think once again it's like this. You rarely see an artist who seems like they are just this fully baked, just right away, right?
Yep, I
just
thought
like
the
that,
same thing from this. And like I do want to see that Slender Man documentary, but it's I don't think we necessarily need it because you've seen this, and I think that was like a step toward making this.
Yeah, I also do. I always am fascinated by the shared like hallucination concept, right? This idea of so people believing something so hard that it kind of becomes true in like in a fucked up way. it's why I think like the concept for that terrible Blair Witch sequel was so good. I mean, it's a terrible execution on the concept, but like,
what an interesting idea for a movie, though. Yeah, I've always thought that Book of Shadows. Yep.
I've seen that movie more than I've seen most great movies because it just fascinates me. And every time I'm like, maybe I'll find it this time. And then there's just too much bad.
I only saw it once in college, and it really works for me because this idea of you party really hard and you wake up the next day and you cannot remember anything about the night before, and then you find out and it's like, oh shit, I did that. I think it captures that much better than movies like The Hangover that make a joke out of that. So I kind of liked it for that.
But this idea of like how the media that we consume and obsess over can shape the way that our brain works, is like absolutely a true thing, right? And it works for both good and ill.
Are we sure that movie's not good, by the way?
No, it's terrible. I watched it.
Okay.
Nick, I've watched it 4 times and 2 times in the last decade. It is not a good movie. It is a bad movie.
It was like this meta thing before we really had those, and I don't know.
It is a terrible movie with a fascinating, clever premise at its core. That is just, it's full of some of the worst actors you'll ever see in your entire life, except for Jeffrey Donovan. Jeffrey Donovan is the lead of it. Mm-hmm. Pre-burn notice Jeffrey Donovan. And he's fine, but it's just, it has all of those like shitty early 2000s movie trappings that like, but it's got like fascinating ideas to it, right? It's
crazy the people who made that too.
Yeah. It's just it's a whole, everything is crazy about it, right? It's crazy that it came out a year after the most successful like indie horror movie of all time. And it basically had been made basically in the backlash of that movie when the backlash happened to Blair Witch Project. And so they were like, no way are we doing anything that's anything like that movie because people, even though it made $200 million and cost $10,000, people hate it now. So we're going to make this thing, right? It's fascinating, right? Because I think it's going back to Blair Witch, I think there is, I don't know if Schoenbrun's ever talked about it, but I got to imagine it's also a touchstone point for them in some ways.
Anyone from that era who was into movies, that was a major sort of cultural event.
But just like even like this movie, like We're All Going to the World's Fair has Blair Witch aspects to it, right? Including this idea of like
the confessional to camera thing
and also just like long, like nothing's happening stuff, which I think the thing, look, they perfected how to do the found footage horror movie over time to whittle it into a place where they knew exactly how to deliver it in a way that would maximize the scares and everything like that.
But did that kind of take away from it?
Yes, it does. Because
like Blair Witch, I mean, I knew, right? Because I was reading all the indie film magazines and everything. I was obsessed with that stuff. But a lot of people I knew were like, oh no, it's a documentary. Like they really found this footage and they cut it together, which, stupid. But you could see how back then, especially because not everybody was reading magazines and reading movie stuff on the internet. No. You could sort of see that as real footage. And
they took advantage of the early internet better than any other thing ever did. Like Artisan or wherever, I think it was Artisan who put that movie out.
Yes,
and whoever ran the marketing for that thing was just fucking genius. It might have been the directors themselves because they also made, I know we're talking about Blair Witch Project right now, but they on the We're All Going to the World's Fair episode, but we're never going to do a Eduardo Sanchez. What is his name? The directors? I can't remember.
Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez.
How
do I still know that?
Yep. Series.
I've seen a couple of their other movies. They're not great.
Yeah. They did do, one of them did a really good short in one of the VHS things though. This idea that they made, you remember they made like that like faux documentary that aired before the movie came out?
The Curse of the Blair Witch, I think it was called. Yeah.
Dude, I was
on the
like,
Sci-Fi Channel. Yeah.
When the movie came out, like 99? Is that when the movie came out?
Yeah, it was 99.
So I was 16. Mm-hmm. I ate that shit up so hard, man. Like I watched that documentary and it was, I think, one of the activating points for me for loving exactly what kind of thing this movie is doing, which is this like mixed media, like transmedia idea of we've got the movie coming out and we run this really smart marketing campaign where we kind of like, we're kind of wanting you to believe it's a true story, right? We want you to believe it's a true story. We're going to hide the actors. We're going to do all this kind of stuff. The first like people who saw it were like, yeah, it's real, so that leaks in, it hooks on virally. And at that time, there's not a way to like dispel that stuff. Like you were saying, kind of takes over in a way. They showed this documentary that was like, really felt like a documentary. It felt like they were,
Yeah, it was good.
And they published a book as well that was like all the back matter and stuff like that. Like, I was like, this is like the dream. Like it can never be repeated
you
again.
At least thought, and maybe it was based on something, but you at least thought the Blair Witch legend is like an urban legend kind of thing was real. And like, here's just a movie version of at very least. But I think they made it all up, right?
They did make it all up. Yeah, they did make it all up. But what I think is, what I love about this, and it relates to Blair Witch, is this idea of like, not everything, every moment that you shoot it is going to be exciting, right? There's going to be boring shit. It's not just going to be all the best moments, right? And I think, that, Blair Witch is anchored by, I don't think it gets enough credit for how good those three actors are in that movie, how good they are at selling it, and how raw they are in it.
Well, because they weren't acting. They were like out in the middle of the woods in the middle of the night, and the directors kind of just scared the shit out of them. Like it was, they were kind of participating in an we're all going to the World's Fair kind of game in the process of making that movie. So that did make it feel a little bit more real. They didn't know when someone was going to like bang on their tent or something like that. Yeah.
And it still has, I think, one of the scariest shots in all of movies, which is the guy staring at the wall at the very end of the movie. And I think like when you get to these movies that are so honed to be, and look, I think that some of the ones like we had a few of these, right? I think like, the first Paranormal Activity has a lot of like air in it. And that one felt like you were talking about, right? Like we got to pad this out to make it a feature length film. Blair Witch didn't feel like that to me. It just felt like that's like, they didn't know, they were kind of inventing the form in a lot of ways, in that point. There have been other sort of movies like that, but nothing really like that exactly, and I think they got to the point where like, they got very good at it and they got very creative about how they were going to have cameras in certain places. But like you said, I think the shinier they get, the less effective they get in most of the time, right? And I think that this movie, what I love about it is that it really embraces not being shiny, right? It embraces it just like, obviously they're not using super expensive cameras. They're using good cameras, but like, clearly
the
video cameras
stuff is nice looking.
Yeah, like and like very well composed, very well, like definitely a filmmaker's sense from Schoenbrun for sure. But this allowing things to have some air in them and allow you to sit in moments a little bit.
Yeah. Almost like a neorealism sort of thing.
Yeah.
These are not exactly non-professional actors. Like I think Anna Cobb went to New York to be an actress and, just kind of hooked up with Schoenbrun there and, probably will do more stuff. But like, this is not a face that we recognize, she doesn't look like she's not made up like a Hollywood actress here. She just looks like a regular person who might be doing something like this at home.
Seeing someone who you don't recognize in this sort of milieu is very effective. And which is why a lot of these movies do it, right?
If JLB was like played by Patrick Wilson or something, it would be a great performance. It is a great performance, by the way. This guy's awesome in this movie. But like, if we recognize him at all, that just takes so much out of the ambiguity and the creepiness and all the stuff that we talked about as being so great. It just wouldn't work. There's just no way to do it. Even if it was like a bit player, it was like, oh yeah, I saw that guy in a scene and like, some Taylor Sheridan show or something. That would destroy the whole illusion, I think.
That started happening in the Paranormal Activity movies, right? They started like having like not famous people, but like you're like, I recognize this person. Yep. Like, you have that feeling when you're watching it.
I will say though, I don't love those movies, but Paranormal Activity 3 has this great bit with a revolving fan, an oscillating fan. 3
is the best one of all of those movies. It is. Great. I think it's genuinely a great horror movie. Like I think it's great. It's the only one I
don't think that about any of them. Yeah, I was very disappointed with the first two, and I don't know how I got dragged to the third one, but I was very pleasantly surprised by how good that one was.
I highly disliked the first one. I remember so excited.
I didn't like the first one either, yeah.
I had this buddy of mine who, like, we used to do, like, horror film races. Like, I don't know if these are. They're basically, like, it's basically, like, you sign up for this thing, and at, like, you have, like, 24 hours, you get, like, a prompt. Like, you get, like, a line that has to be said, a situation, and something else. And you have to like make a movie in like 24 hours.
48-hour film festival.
Yeah,
24 hours.
Yeah, they used to call them film races. That's what the one we used to do. So we were getting the prompt at midnight, and so we went to see Paranormal Activity at like 9:00 or whatever. Both really excited, both huge horror people. He's an even bigger horror fan than me. He's like you with horror stuff. Like he watches everything. Like all the weirdest shit you could possibly imagine. Hyped up to go see it. We see it, and we both walked out, and we're like, well, that was terrible. Like, but that's how we felt about it,
Yeah.
And then the second one, I remember feeling much the same about it for like the first 45 minutes. And then thinking the last like half an hour of it was brilliant. You know.
See, I didn't like the second one, but there's this one bit where like all the cabinets like blow open.
Oh yeah,
at one point in the kitchen.
Yeah.
I was like, that was pretty good. That got me.
There's also like 6 scenes of like the pool hose falling in that they're like, whoa. And I just remember at that point being like, I just want these to be regular movies. Like, why did, you know, and then I remember being so excited when the wand stuff happened, like the Insidious Conjuring stuff happened, because I was like, this is like how you should make most of these movies. Don't make a found footage movie unless there's a reason for it to be found footage.
Or I love Sinister, which is a movie that is
Sinister,
mostly not found footage, but the found footage stuff in it is terrifying.
Creepy and very, and that's what like the Blumhouse heyday, right? That was like one famous actor or 2 famous actors in one location, and let's just do it, man.
Great director, great concept.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Low budget.
And I think like I think, you know, you like with everything, right? You get these things that are copycats and thing. I don't think there's a way you can take what Schoenbrun does and make it into something like that, right?
No.
It's so particular.
We've seen so many movies, and like it doesn't make us like. It just means we've seen a lot of movies, right?
That's all.
So when I say I've never seen anything like this before, you know, I'm drawing from a bigger pool of films than the average person is, right?
Yeah.
I have never seen anything like this before.
No, absolutely not.
Like, I'm getting to a point, I'm getting old and jaded where it's like, that means so much to me just in and of itself. Like, show me something I've never seen before. I'm a fan. Yeah,
absolutely. And on top of that, not just unique, but I think also really good and interesting, right? It's like, it has both sides to it. And that's why I think they're such an exciting filmmaker, and why I'm so excited to see the new movie that's coming out in a couple of weeks. Because I just,
because that one is drawing on so many things that I just find fascinating. And like, it's summertime now. I've been watching a bunch of all those old camp slasher things. I developed a abiding love for a movie I'd seen before, Sleepaway Camp, that of course I saw. You know, a student of mine did a screening locally last Halloween, and I'd seen it a couple times, and I know it's kind of a fun movie. I never thought it was a good movie, and now I can almost make a case for that being a good movie.
Another movie with a famous twist at the end.
Yeah, which is one that I think Schoenbrun is probably going to refer to in some way, or
I'm sure,
deal with in some sense in this movie. Like I whatever this is, and it's getting some great reviews already. Whatever it is, I think it's going to be fascinating. Like, I'm on board for this. I kind of figured I would be. We'll talk about it next week, but I've had a lot of people say to me, like, have you seen it? Not just you, but you were definitely one of them. But I saw the TV Glow is like a very important movie for a lot of people that I've talked to about it. And, you know, in terms of stuff that they've seen and stuff that's come out recently, like seem to speak to a lot of them in really interesting ways. So, you know, 3 films in and we're already changing people's lives.
I think just like this movie, it speaks to the modern experience of living in a way that most movies don't touch right now. I think a lot of filmmakers are scared or just like averse to doing movies that are set in modern times, dealing with modern things, because they're, and obviously there's
everything is so scary now.
Everything's like, so scary, but also everything is like so connected and everything's so readily available that I think people are like, how do you create tension? How do you create like interesting moments when, you know, any question can be answered in, you know, a blink of the eye sort of thing. And of course, like Schoenbrun is abstracting the modern day in a way, especially in I Saw the TV Glow, but also in this, like you said, you're not seeing anything like, you're never out in a modern setting, like as far as like interacting with people or dealing with something where like someone has to get to this place at a certain amount of time and how are we going to communicate? None of that stuff is in this movie, right? But and even I Saw the TV Glow is sort of like a period piece as while it's still speaking to the modern experience. But I think we talked about this when we were talking about A Real Pain a couple of like last year, the last time we did, you know, a kind of best of show. And I think that I was like refreshed that they were just like talking about like the world that we live in now, you know, and having like conversations about what it's like to live in that world. And I think that, you know, we live in an age where, and I'm not even just talking about like the escapist stuff. Like the escapist stuff, I don't care if like, you know, Batman
I agree,
deals with the real world.
I feel like movies are a little evasive about it, and we should probably, or if they're not, they're making like very sort of like ham-handed points about it, whereas there's nuance to, you know, even the world we live in now.
Like our great totemic filmmakers, it's like all period pieces. It's all, it's all these things. It's all these elevated things. And it's just like, good. Like, I'm happy that you make movies like this, but like, don't you live in the world currently? Isn't kind of like your whole job to like,
right. And that's one of the beautiful things about movies that I always say, right? Like, you can watch films from any era and get some sense of what that era is like. It's not always a perfectly representative, realistic picture, but you watch movies made in the early 70s and you get a sense of what things were like culturally, politically, the things that were on people's minds and the things that kind of, people were attracted to, repelled by, stuff like that. I don't necessarily know that that's going to happen for movies of this era. Like, that's why I think something like this is really important, because I agree with you. I think it captures that. Backrooms, I think, is another. I
agree.
Probably going to end up being my favorite movie of this year. It's got its problems, but there's like a vibe there and there's a feeling there that I just think it's important. It's something that we should think a little bit more about. Like, I've been reading a lot of great think pieces about that. And, I haven't seen a lot of great think pieces about many other types of things. Most of it's like about why Supergirl was a box office bomb or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's like industry shit. And like, I'm not that interested in that anymore. Like, I think we have bigger questions to deal with right now.
Yeah, and it's also become this
versus streaming is less important to me than where are we going?
It's also become like everything else in the world, it's become this thing where having a view and a scope onto the industry side of things used to be like this thing that only a few people did or could do, and now the entire all of Reddit are all like box office
everybody
experts,
thinks they can step in and be James Gunn or Zack Snyder,
or producers, or know how to know what goes into making a movie or producing a movie, or what the business of movies actually is, and why things fail and why things don't, and even publications. Every movie that comes out that is successful means that movies are back, and every movie that comes out that fails means movies are over. And it's just like this whole thing where like we've been caught up in this world of takes for so long at this point, where it's just like everything's a take, everything needs to be a take, everyone has to have a take on everything that happens. Things can't be isolated incidents, things have to be symptoms of something else, or they have to mean the death of this genre or the birth of this genre, or now every filmmaker is going to be a 19-year-old YouTuber. Like, it's just this thing where it's like, the truth is nobody knows really why things hit and things don't. People also, if we really feel like with movies right now, we're in this similar situation that TV was in like the late 2000s, early 2010s, where, 55 million people weren't watching an episode of Seinfeld anymore, and people were like, well, Community's it only has 10 million people watching it. We got to cancel it. And now 15 years later, if a show was getting 10 million people watching it every week, it would be the biggest show in the world. And everyone would be like, oh my God, it's the second coming of everything. And I think movies are in the same place where people are like, well, this movie only, look at it like, this movie made $900 million at the worldwide box office. This one only made 500. What happened? And it's like, but look at every movie now. There's like 2 movies a year now that break out in that way, and everything that was the aberration in that era. Things are just heading back to the mean again. Like, that's all that's happening. You have to adjust how you look at these things as time progresses. You're stuck in a different era. It's time to look at it in a different way, and it's like, you're going to have breakout successes like Obsession, like where it costs less than $1 million. And now it's going to make $350 million or whatever, which is crazy and amazing. And I think it's fantastic. Like, I love that happened. There's no way to recreate it. I don't care if you get the same, equation of people and actors and idea but like, it's just, this is a singular thing that happened. And to relate to a totally different movie, there was no way to replicate what happened in My Big Fat Greek Wedding, right? There was no way to replicate it. It just never she couldn't replicate it, when she made sequels to it. You can't replicate it. You take all the wrong lessons from these things.
The thing to do maybe is throw small amounts of money at really creative people like Schoenbrun, and they're going to make singular things that maybe, connect. Not this one necessarily, but I saw the TV Glow was that.
Just let people.
That's the way, right?
Let interesting filmmakers make the movies they want to make. You're going to have filmmakers who make small movies that, connect very strongly with a small amount of people. And then you're going to have filmmakers who their entire brain, the movies they want to make are big movies that are going to connect with millions and millions of people. I guarantee you no studio system would have baked in that Memento would have launched the career of the most popular modern commercial filmmaker
of all time. Yeah.
You know, like it wasn't going to happen. You just never would have put that together. Right. So like, stop trying to engineer the next person and let these people who have great ideas, interesting ideas do their thing. I mean, it's like you get Nolans and you get Kuglers who like their brains, the kind of movies they want to make are giant movies that everybody wants to see. But then you're going to get other filmmakers that make really interesting movies that aren't going to make a ton of money right now. But you know what you're also doing? You're seeding a group of people who grow up on those movies who when they get older, they're going to start seeing these movies en masse. Look at Martin Scorsese's career and look at how he started out being this like, well, you know, he's this tough filmmaker who like, you know, his movies are great, but like, they're not like, you know, they don't blow it away at the box office. Him having this run in the mid, you know, 2000s, early 2010s, where every movie he made a ton of money because like people who grew up with them were like, oh my God, I love this person. They mean everything to me. And they did it. And like, that's the kind of filmmaker I think Schoenbrun definitely is, right? And maybe one day they'll be like, you know what? I've got this idea that's a little bit more like, you know, has my ideas in it, but delivers them in a way that's a little less like off-putting to some people. And that movie will do enough to like get them in a place where they can do whatever they want, right?
Yeah.
But I just, the whole idea is let these people who have interesting ideas make interesting movies. This idea, and it's this thing that we've been led down to by these giant corporations into believing they can't afford to spend $20 million on a movie and it not make $300 million. It's bullshit. They can spend that amount of money. That's pocket change to them. You know, like they can afford to do it. You just need people who are want to invest in a medium and an art and realize that there's more to all of this than just the dollar sign that comes out the other end when they finish making a movie, you know?
Well, that's always been the way though, isn't it?
It has, but it's as bad now as it's ever been.
Everything is more corporatized than ever.
Because they've also convinced a whole generation.
That's part of it too, right? Like going back to what we were just talking about, right? That's this whole idea of why is nobody making movies about the way things are now? Well, because you can't say certain things now that you maybe could have before.
It's true.
I mean, there's like so many, like Hollywood makes all these very sort of disingenuous anti-corporate sort of statements in their movies, but like, you know, they don't make real anti-corporate movies because they're giant corporations that are financing these things. And not that that's the only thing that's happening in the world right now that needs to be talked about in films, you know, for future generations or just for us to kind of process what's going on. But like, you know, there's got to be a little bit more freedom for stuff like that. You know, they're like, we're not a censorship society yet. So let's get that stuff out there while we can, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Anyway, awesome movie. I it's one of those movies that I think is also a kind of thing where like, I watched it yesterday and I already think more highly of it now than I thought of it when it was over. And I really liked it when it was over, you know? So
yeah. Well, it kind of got better and better for me over time, you know, as it kind of just revealed different aspects of itself, but also stayed very singularly focused on what it was. And like I said, I have not stopped thinking about it. I was at the beach today, just like, you know, there's like a scene just playing over and over in my mind. It's like, what did that mean? And maybe I should watch that again. Didn't get a chance to, but definitely an experience.
For sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, so that's going to do it for our first episode on Jane Schoenbrun. We will be back next time with I Saw the TV Glow. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. But until then, thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Bobby.
And thank you to everybody who's watching or listening. Be good to one another. Later.